She thinks a hug can pay rent, my daughter scoffed, loud enough for her husband to laugh. I was still holding the grocery bags, still smiling. By sunrise, my signature was back on the deed. Hers wasn't. She never read the fine print I'd tucked away for years. Now she's pacing a house that's no longer hers, and when the realtor knocks, she'll know who unlocked the door. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Elaine stood in the entryway, her hands cradling a cloth grocery bag packed with produce and discount-labeled meat. Her fingers ached from the cold and the weight, but she still smiled when Riley appeared at the top of the stairs, hair damp from a recent shower, a coffee mug dangling lazily from her hand. "Hey, sweetheart," Elaine said softly, nudging the door shut with her heel. "I picked up that almond creamer you like." Riley didn't move. She just leaned on the banister and glanced at the bags with mild disinterest. "You didn't need to do all that," she said flatly, not unkind, just indifferent, like someone commenting on a stranger's weather choice. Elaine walked toward the kitchen, the rhythm of her steps practiced after decades in the same home. Her home? No, their home now. At least on paper. She had handed the deed to Riley and James 5 years ago, thinking it would be simpler that way. Safer, maybe. She had no other children, and Riley had insisted it would help with the mortgage. Just legal housekeeping, she'd said with a smile that now felt rehearsed in memory. Elaine had signed, not knowing how ownership could mutate entitlement. Back then, Riley still hugged her, still called her mom instead of Elaine, still asked her how she slept. Elaine placed the bags on the counter and began unloading them. The refrigerator door creaked open, too long unoiled. She made a mental note to fix it before it annoyed James. "Those eggs are for the casserole I'm making tomorrow," she said, voice trailing off into the cold interior of the fridge. Footsteps approached behind her. Elaine turned, half expecting gratitude, even a casual thanks. But what met her wasn't a hug. It was a laugh, sharp, clipped, and aimed sideways. "She thinks a hug can pay rent," Riley muttered, not quite under her breath, to someone behind her. "James." He snorted. Elaine didn't even glance his way. The words didn't land like a slap. Slaps are fast. This felt slower, heavier, like a blade drawn through water. Elaine straightened. The egg carton trembled in her hand. She set it down. She looked at Riley, really looked. Wet hair, manicured nails, a pair of designer joggers that cost more than Elaine's monthly Social Security check, and then James, still in his slippers at 2 p.m., sipping a can of craft beer like it was earned. No one met her eyes. Elaine didn't argue. She didn't correct or confront. She nodded, small, barely visible, just enough to acknowledge what had shifted. "I'll be in my room," she said quietly. Neither of them responded. She walked slowly down the hall to the master suite that was no longer truly hers, passing the framed wedding photo of her and her late husband. The frame had been cracked since last year's move, but she'd never bothered to replace it. In the bedroom, she shut the door softly. Not a slam. A decision. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for someone. The silence stretched long. She could hear laughter again. Through the walls this time, thinner than memory. Her eyes landed on the dresser drawer. That's where she kept the paperwork, the deed, the copies, the pieces of her past she'd boxed up as formality, and one document she never filed, the quitclaim her husband had advised her to hold on to, just in case. Elaine stood, opened the drawer. Her fingers brushed the envelope without pulling it out. Not yet. Outside, Riley's voice lifted in mock amusement about something on the TV. Elaine shut the drawer. She didn't cry, not even a prick at the edge of her eyes. Instead, she whispered, mostly to herself, but also to the room, "All right then." Her voice was calm, not defeated, calculating, like someone flipping to the first page of a long, slow-burning book. Elaine sat cross-legged on the bed, the iPad balanced on her knees, her reading glasses slipping to the tip of her nose. She scrolled slowly, double-tapping links with methodical care. The blue glow of the screen flickered against her face, reflected in the silver band she still wore on her ring finger. The county records were public. That part surprised her. Even more surprising, how easy it was to pull up the transfer documents. Grantor, Elaine D. Harrow. Grantee, Riley K. Nolan and James R. Nolan. Type, warranty deed date. Filed September 14, 2018. She tapped through each page like peeling old wallpaper, waiting for something, anything, that proved she hadn't given it all away. And then there it was. Her breath caught. No mention of a life estate, no retention of lifetime residency, no clause stating she could remain in the home until death. She'd signed it all away, fully, cleanly. She blinked at the screen, then sat back against the pillows. The ceiling swam slightly. For a moment, she felt the edges of panic nipping at her ribs, but it passed, like everything does. She reached for her phone. "Gwen," she said when the call connected. "Elaine? Well, this is a surprise. It's been, 6 years since we played at Ridgeview?" Elaine gave a faint smile. "Longer, but I'm calling about something sensitive." Gwen's tone sharpened, but not unkindly. "All right, talk to me." Elaine explained, crisp and factual. No self-pity, just the facts of the deed, the missing clause, the behavior. By the end of it, Gwen's breath came through the line like wind. "Jesus, Elaine, she's trying to bury you with your own pen." Elaine didn't speak. "Do you still have the quitclaim?" Gwen asked. "I believe so," Elaine said. "Filed away in the dresser. Never recorded." Gwen exhaled again, softer this time. "If you do, and if we move fast, we can make this very interesting." Before Elaine could ask how, the bedroom door creaked open. Riley. No knock, just presence. Elaine quickly tapped the iPad's home button, minimizing the browser. "Everything all right?" she asked, too evenly. Riley cocked her head, eyes narrowing with exaggerated sweetness. "Just wondering why the Wi-Fi's slowed down? You watching one of your internet research documentaries again?" Elaine smiled mildly. "Just reading up on elder nutrition. You know how many seniors don't get enough calcium?" Riley laughed, the same brittle chime Elaine remembered from high school parent-teacher nights. "I swear, Mom," she said, "you and that iPad, like you're trying to earn a degree from Google." Elaine let the smile linger. "Keeps the mind sharp." "Sure it does." Riley leaned on the doorframe. "Well, don't go down any weird rabbit holes. James said he caught you reading about eviction laws the other day." Elaine gave a soft chuckle. "James says a lot of things." Riley didn't reply. She stayed just a second longer than needed, then disappeared down the hall. Elaine waited until her footsteps faded. Then she called Gwen back. "She's watching me." Gwen's voice came through steady. "Let her. You've got the upper hand if you stay still. Do nothing rash until we confirm the deed's still legally viable." Elaine stood and moved to the dresser. Her fingers brushed the familiar envelope. Still there. She opened it carefully and pulled out the cream-colored document, edges still crisp, signed in ink that had faded just slightly. Unrecorded quitclaim deed. Elaine stared at it. Gwen's voice was calm but decisive now. "If that's the original and it was never filed, we can still use it. Riley's name might be on the title now, but that paper makes it reversible, without warning her." Elaine returned the document to its place and slid the drawer closed. Outside, she could hear Riley and James laughing at some sitcom rerun. Her jaw tightened, but her hands were steady. "Monday," Gwen said, already moving into lawyer mode. "We file it Monday, but until then—" "I know," Elaine said softly. Not a word. She hung up, walked back to her bed, and opened the iPad again. This time, not to read, to wait. The basement hadn't been opened in months. Elaine flipped the switch and descended slowly, the wooden stairs creaking beneath her weight like a warning. The air grew colder with each step, thick with dust and the faint scent of mothballs and metal shelving. Light flickered from a single hanging bulb overhead, enough to cast long shadows on the cement floor. She made her way to the far corner, where her late husband's boxes had lived untouched since the move. The Sharpie on the side of one read, "Estate." Jack, faded to a faint brown. Elaine hesitated before touching it, her fingers trembling with memory more than age. She knelt. The cardboard groaned as she peeled it open. Folders, envelopes, a stack of his retirement correspondence, bundled with a green rubber band stretched thin. A dog-eared manila envelope labeled "Important." House docs lay wedged between an Army discharge letter and an unopened Father's Day card Riley had never mailed. She pulled it free and sat on the cold floor. Inside were layers of the past. The appraisal on the house from 1991, a warranty on a water heater that had died 3 years ago, and then the unfiled quitclaim deed. Her name in blue ink, Jack's handwriting on the label tab. He'd written, "Keep, just in case." Elaine's chest constricted, not from sadness, but something older, sharper. She remembered the last conversation they'd had about Riley before the stroke. Jack had been sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread around him like battlefield debris. "She's not ready," he'd said. "Not for the house, not for you." Elaine had waved him off. "She'll grow into it." "You can't will someone into maturity, Lane," he'd replied, eyes tired but clear. "Don't give her too much too soon. You'll lose more than you think." And now, 5 years later, here she was, kneeling in the dust, clutching the document that proved he had been right. Her hands didn't shake as she opened her purse and slid the paper inside. She zipped the leather shut, stood slowly, and brushed her palms off against her coat. Back upstairs, she set the purse gently on the bed and called Gwen. "It's real," she said. "Original ink, notarized, never filed." Gwen whistled low. "Then that deed is still legally alive. If we file it first, Riley would have to sue to contest it, and with no clause about lifetime tenancy on her copy, she'd be fighting uphill with no boots." Elaine nodded, more to herself than the voice on the phone. "She won't see it coming," Gwen added. "File first, talk never." Elaine didn't answer right away. She walked to the window and looked out over the snowy backyard where the bird feeder hung empty. Jack used to refill it every Sunday morning, even in the dead of winter. Her fingers curled tighter around the phone. She laughed, Elaine finally said, voice hollow but calm. "Said a hug doesn't pay rent." There was a pause on Gwen's end. Then, "You gave her a home, and she thought it was a receipt." Elaine nodded again, slower this time. When she hung up, she tucked the purse beneath her side of the bed, behind a quilted chest filled with family photos Riley hadn't asked about in years. She walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. In the mirror, her reflection looked older. Yes, but not small, not soft, solid. From the hall, she could hear the TV humming with canned laughter. James's voice floated in, asking if there were any beers left. Elaine dried her hands, stepped back into the bedroom. Chuck. She didn't take out the deed again. She didn't need to. She already felt its weight in her bones. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like leverage. Elaine was halfway through slicing carrots when she heard the boots. Heavy, deliberate, impatient. James's gate. Riley's voice followed a beat later, sharp and echoing through the hall. "Mom? We need to talk." Elaine dried her hands on a dish towel and turned toward the archway. Riley stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed tight enough to drain the color. James lingered behind her, trying and failing to look casual. Elaine offered a warm, puzzled smile. "Something wrong?" Riley stepped into the kitchen like she was taking the floor in a courtroom. "I saw your browser history, Mom." Elaine blinked. "My what?" "Quitclaim deeds, property transfers, real estate law." Elaine tilted her head. "Oh, that. I was just reading. You know how I get on tangents." James spoke up, his voice lower, firmer. "She thinks you're trying to sell the house." Elaine turned toward him. "Sell the house?" Riley cut in. "Don't play dumb, Mom. Are you talking to someone about selling it?" "To what? Buy a condo near the mall? You know you signed it over." Elaine kept her expression pleasantly confused. "Why would I sell a house that isn't mine?" That stopped Riley, only for a second. "Exactly," she said, voice rising. "So why are you looking into ways to reverse ownership?" Elaine shrugged, easing into a chair and folding the towel over her lap. "Maybe I'm just curious, or bored, Or maybe I miss Jack and I don't feel like explaining every tap on my iPad. There was a silence. Not long, but long enough. James took a breath. Look, no one's accusing you of anything, but Riley and I have been talking and maybe it's time you considered independent living. Elaine looked up slowly. Independent, she repeated. Meaning? Riley stepped closer. Somewhere with support. Somewhere safe. You're not 20 anymore, Mom. You get confused. You forget things. It's not an insult. It's just reality. Elaine didn't blink. I see. You could tour places next week, James said like it was a favor. We found a nice one with a view of the lake. Elaine leaned back in the chair, one hand gently tracing the edge of the towel in her lap. I'll think about it, she said sweetly. It's kind of you both to care. Riley opened her mouth, then hesitated, thrown off by the softness. Elaine smiled again, warmer this time, almost indulgent. James checked his watch. We'll talk more later. Riley looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead she turned and followed James down the hallway. Elaine waited until their footsteps faded. Then she stood, walked to the sink, and ran cold water over the cutting board. Her pulse was steady now, cooler than before. The house felt quieter but not peaceful, just paused. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Gwen, still good for Monday? Elaine replied with one word. Elaine, yes. Another message followed instantly. Gwen, don't engage, don't explain, file first, talk never. Elaine smiled, a slow, tired smile, the kind that knows exactly where the landmines are now. She opened the drawer beneath the microwave and slid the folded deed next to her prescription organizer. Riley never looked there. Too boring, too mundane. Monday was only 2 days away, just 2 days. She wiped down the counter like nothing had happened, humming quietly under her breath, a song she couldn't place but knew by feel. In the living room, she heard James laughing at something on the television. The laugh no longer stung. It just marked time. The car ride to the county office was silent, but not empty. Gwen kept both hands on the wheel, jaw clenched in the way only lawyers and mothers know how. Elaine sat beside her, purse tucked tightly under one arm, the unfiled quitclaim deed pressed flat inside like a hidden fuse. Snow glazed the streets in slushy patches, the kind of morning that dared you to slip if you weren't paying attention. Elaine didn't speak. She watched the houses blur past, one-story ranches, crooked fences, brittle trees with brittle limbs. It was a different town now, even though she'd lived in it for decades. She felt it in the way her neighbors smiled more through glass than face-to-face. At exactly 9:03 a.m., Gwen Parallel parked outside the Cook County Recorder's office. "You ready?" she asked, voice flat but careful. Elaine nodded. They moved without flourish, stepping past the metal detector, past the woman at the front desk who didn't look up from her crossword. The elevator wheezed up to the 3rd floor. Elaine walked with slow, certain steps, like someone headed not to war but to a will reading she already knew the contents of. They entered the deeds division. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A clerk with chipped green nail polish waved them forward. Gwen did the talking. Quitclaim filing, original ink, accompanied by an affidavit of intent and amended trust designation. The clerk barely looked up. ID? Elaine handed over her license and watched as the woman flipped through the pages. Stamp, click, another stamp. The document passed hands, first into the notary's grip, her signature looping quickly in black ink, then back into Gwen's leather portfolio. It was done in under 11 minutes. 11 minutes to retake what had been hers for 37 years. Back in the elevator, Gwen finally let out a breath. "Congratulations," she said. "You now legally own the home. Riley's claim is void unless she sues, and trust me, she'd lose." Elaine didn't smile. She just nodded. "Next step? We update your estate plan." They stopped at Gwen's firm on the way home, a quiet office tucked behind a dentist's storefront, the kind of place designed to look forgettable. Elaine followed Gwen to her desk, signed the new trust paperwork with steady hands, and watched as Gwen crossed out the names Riley K. Nolan and James R. Nolan from the beneficiary list. "New beneficiary?" Gwen asked. Elaine reached into her purse and pulled out a brochure, a photo of a senior Labrador, tongue hanging, eyes cloudy with love. "Cedar Valley Animal Haven. Every life deserves comfort." "They let me walk the dogs when I'm lonely," Elaine said. "They don't ask questions." Gwen smiled. "Done." By noon, the trust was updated, the deed recorded, and Riley legally removed from the path of Elaine's legacy. They didn't stop for lunch. Elaine walked into the house through the garage like it was any other day. She removed her coat, hung it in the hallway closet, and slid the now-filed deed into the bottom of her knitting basket. Riley and James were in the dining room, eating takeout from a foam container. "Hey, look who's still here," Riley called with a smirk. "You didn't get lost on your way to the independent living tour?" James laughed under his breath. Elaine set her keys down and walked past them, not even offering a blink. "Chicken's in the freezer if you want something real later," she said. "Oh, she's feisty today," Riley said, popping a straw into her iced tea. Elaine didn't respond. She stepped into the kitchen and began washing an apple like the world hadn't changed. But it had. It was all hers now. She bit into the fruit, the crunch echoing just loud enough to cover the faint ding of Gwen's text on her phone. "Gwen, filed, certified, bulletproof. You did it." Elaine set the phone down without replying. She didn't need to say anything. The silence was starting to speak for her. The knock came at 11:42 a.m. It was too polite to be a neighbor, too punctual to be a delivery. Riley opened the door with a phone in one hand and mild irritation already blooming behind her eyes. "Yes?" The woman standing there was in her mid-30s, blazer neat, clipboard in hand, a name tag clipped to her lapel. Maya Kravitz, residential listings. Behind her, a smart black sedan idled in the driveway. "Hi, I'm with Windward Realty," she said warmly. "I'm here for the lockbox installation and interior photos. Is now still a good time?" Riley blinked. "I think you've got the wrong house." Maya glanced at her clipboard. 1531 Hickory Lane, correct? "Yes, but this house isn't for sale." A pause. Maya smiled with professional apology. "I was told it is. I have signed authorization from the owner on record." "Elaine Harrow?" From the kitchen, Elaine stirred her tea. Riley's shoulders stiffened. "That's my mother. She wouldn't." Maya tilted her head. "If there's confusion, I can wait outside while you clarify." Riley turned away from the door like it had burned her. She stormed into the kitchen, eyes flaring. "Mom." Elaine looked up calmly, teaspoon resting neatly on the saucer. "There's a realtor at the door," Riley snapped. "She says she's here for a listing. For this house," Elaine sipped. "That's right." Riley stared at her, blinking. "You... what?" Elaine set the cup down with care. "The house is on the market." James appeared in the hallway, drawn by the volume. "What the hell is going on?" Elaine folded the napkin in her lap. "You should let her in. She needs interior photos for the listing page." Riley's voice cracked. "You can't do that. You can't. We own this house." Elaine finally stood, slowly, her movements unhurried but rooted like stone. "No," she said. "You did, until I filed the original quitclaim deed. It was never voided, just unfiled. Legally, I reassumed full ownership. Last week." James's mouth opened but no words came. Elaine continued, voice steady, polite. "You weren't on the recorded title anymore as of 10:17 a.m. Monday. You can call the county office and ask." "You tricked us," James snapped. "No." Gwen's voice rang from the hallway. She stepped through the open front door behind Maya, coat still half-buttoned, legal folder under one arm. "She followed the law. You gambled she wouldn't." Gwen nodded at the realtor, who stepped into the foyer with delicate professionalism and began scanning the room for lighting angles. Riley looked pale now, hands shaking as she pulled out her phone and dialed. James paced, muttering, "This is insane. This is theft." "No," Gwen said again, her tone tightening. "This is restitution. And before you try to call it elder abuse or mental instability, I'd be happy to send you copies of Elaine's cognitive clearance and the certified trust documents. Riley's call went to voicemail. He's not answering, she mumbled, more to herself than anyone else. Elaine glanced toward the staircase. You'll need to begin packing. Excuse me? James barked. The sale is active. Contract is already signed. You have 30 days to vacate. Elaine didn't just take back the deed. She sold the house. The lockbox wasn't a bluff. The ink was dry. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Maya approached Gwen. Would you like me to start the photos upstairs or down? Gwen turned to Elaine. Your call. Elaine looked at Riley and James, both frozen, stunned in a house that no longer legally belonged to them. Start upstairs, Elaine said softly. Let's begin at the top. Riley's voice broke. Where are we supposed to go? Elaine walked past her, brushing a hand across the banister as she went. I'm sure you'll figure something out, she said. I hear the lake view's lovely this time of year. The next morning started with a slam. Not a door. Riley's fist against the kitchen counter. You can't do this, Mom. This isn't over, she shouted, eyes puffy, hair pulled into a rushed knot. Elaine stood by the sink, slicing oranges with the precision of someone used to chaos. She didn't look up. Gwen answered instead. From the breakfast nook, coffee in hand, papers spread across the table like a chessboard. Actually, she can, and she did. Riley turned on her, furious. You're her friend. How can you be okay with her throwing her own daughter out? Gwen's smile didn't reach her eyes. Because I've watched her be used like a doormat for 5 years, and I don't pity people who mistake love for weakness. Riley's voice cracked. We have nowhere to go. Elaine set the knife down, finally facing her. You had 5 years to plan for a life you thought was yours. I suggest you start. The tears came then. Fast, hot, and calculated. You're abandoning me, your own child. Elaine didn't flinch. I'm releasing you. There's a difference. James entered then, half-dressed and clearly trying to read the room. Okay, let's all just take a breath, he said, placing a hand on Riley's shoulder. Maybe we were all too hasty. Let's talk. Like a family. Elaine turned to Gwen. Would you like to explain the rest? Gwen slid a new document across the table. This is the formal eviction notice. You have 29 days left, non-negotiable. Elaine has filed with the county, and a third-party service will deliver a copy by week's end to make it official. Riley's mouth dropped open. James turned pale. Elaine walked over to the table, opened her checkbook, and tore out one last slip, payable to Gwen's firm for expedited legal processing. Oh, and Riley, she said calmly, you'll find the joint bank account closed. The utilities are already transferring into my name. You'll need to settle your own arrangements. James stepped forward, arms up like surrender. Elaine, come on. We've had our differences, sure, but we're family. You don't have to do this. Elaine met his eyes for the first time in weeks. You let her laugh at me in my own kitchen. You took my quiet for consent. That was your mistake. He looked to Gwen, to Riley, then back to Elaine. Please. I can change. We can fix this. I'm sure you can, Elaine said. Somewhere else. The silence that followed was hollow, save for the hum of the fridge and the low whimper Riley didn't bother to stifle anymore. Elaine picked up her teacup and turned to the window, watching the frost begin to melt from the corners of the glass. Gwen stood, collected the documents, and placed one copy neatly in a folder labeled Final Notice. We'll have movers here in 25 days. You can hire your own if you prefer. Either way, this house will be empty when the new buyers arrive. Riley leaned against the counter like her legs were failing her. James just stared at the floor, mouth opening, then closing, then opening again. Elaine's phone buzzed once on the counter. She checked it without rush. Realtor text. Showings begin Thursday. Elaine typed a reply with one hand. Confirmed. Then she turned back to her daughter. I won't fight with you, Riley, but I will no longer fund the war you've waged against your own mother. Riley looked up, tears streaking her face now. How can you say that? Elaine paused. Then, because I finally mean it. She stepped away, Gwen following quietly behind. Outside, the wind carried leaves across the lawn. The air smelled of thawing earth and things waking up after too long buried. Elaine didn't smile, but she walked taller than she had in years. The knock came at 7:42 a.m., 3 sharp raps, official in rhythm. Not Gwen, not the realtor. Elaine opened the door in her robe and slippers to find 2 uniformed officers standing on the porch, snow clinging to the edges of their boots. "Mrs. Harrow?" the taller one asked, voice measured. "Yes? We're here for a wellness check. A report was filed this morning alleging possible elder abuse and mental decline. It came through as an anonymous tip, but—" He trailed off, shifting uncomfortably. Elaine smiled, small and steady. "Come in, officers. I've been expecting this." The shorter one blinked. "You have?" "I have," she said. "Tea?" They declined. She didn't push. She led them to the dining table where 3 manila folders were already laid out, one with her cognitive assessment signed by her physician, another with notarized copies of the revised trust and deed, and the third containing her medication list and advance directive. The taller officer flipped through them, eyebrows lifting higher with each page. "You're remarkably organized," he said. "I was a hospice nurse for 28 years, Elaine replied. "Planning is how we protect the vulnerable, even from family." The younger officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, respectfully, if you were in any distress, you'd tell us?" Elaine looked him directly in the eye. "Gentlemen, if I were in distress, you wouldn't be in my kitchen. You'd be at a hospital or a morgue." A beat of silence followed. Then the taller one chuckled softly. "Noted." They left 20 minutes later, not with suspicion, but with respect. As they walked back to their cruiser, Gwen pulled into the driveway and stepped out, coat flapping behind her like a lawyer's cape. She watched them go, then looked at Elaine. "She actually did it?" Elaine nodded. "Anonymous tip, claimed mental instability, probably from a burner phone." Gwen shook her head in disbelief. "Classic delay tactic. Temporary injunction buys her a few weeks if the judge bites. She's stalling." Elaine didn't respond immediately. She walked to the counter and opened her day planner. The page for this week had already been marked in red. Showings, Thursday, lockbox, installed. "I'm done waiting," she said. "Let her stall. I'll move the finish line." She reached for her phone and tapped her contacts. "Movers. Red Hawk Logistics," a woman answered. "Red Hawk, this is Bree." "Yes, this is Elaine Harrow. I need to schedule a full pack and move. Next Monday, no delay." "Got it, Mrs. Harrow. Local or out of state?" Elaine hesitated. Then, "Temporary storage for now. I'll decide where next soon." She hung up and looked out the window. Riley's car was still parked in the driveway, its windshield iced over, untouched. She hadn't come downstairs since yesterday's showdown, but Elaine knew that silence by now. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. "Tell your title rep to push up closing if possible," she said to Gwen. "I want it done before the ink on her injunction dries." Gwen nodded, already thumbing her phone. Elaine walked to her room and pulled open the top drawer of her dresser. Inside, the scarf Jack had given her their last Christmas still smelled faintly of cedar and firewood. She wrapped it around her shoulders like armor. Outside, the wind had shifted again, but this time, she didn't brace against it. She opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, letting it hit her full on. The house behind her still looked the same, but everything inside, everything that mattered, had moved, and down the street a different car idled, its window rolled down, just enough to show a shadowed figure. Watching. Elaine narrowed her eyes. Let them come. She was ready now. Elaine heard the knock just after lunch. Software tentative. A neighbor's knock, not a threat's. She opened the door to find Marla Jenkins standing on the porch, cheeks flushed from the cold, holding a foil-covered pie dish like a peace offering from a gentler universe. "I heard there's been noise," Marla said gently. "Thought you might need a slice of apple and a reminder you're not the villain." Elaine blinked, surprised. "I haven't felt like the villain, but I'll take the pie." They sat in the sunroom, snow falling in lazy spirals outside the window. Marla talked about her sister's divorce, about the cruelty that hides behind the word family, and how sometimes the bravest thing isn't confrontation, Its conclusion. Elaine listened. Then she laughed. You were always better at advice when it came with pastry. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mandy from the animal shelter, young, bright-eyed, and more competent than most executives Elaine had worked with in her nursing days. Hey, Elaine, just wanted to check, do you still need help loading boxes next week? A few of the volunteers offered. We can bring crates too, and strong backs. Elaine hesitated. You'd do that? Of course, Mandy said. You're family now, and the dogs would be disappointed if we didn't show up. Elaine smiled, warmth rising in her chest. Then I'll make tea. By dusk, 3 things had happened. The realtor called and confirmed the official closing date, 2 weeks from Friday. Gwen sent over a new revision to the estate plan with a note, final pass. Let me know if you want to add anything. And Riley slammed the front door without a word, stomping upstairs as James followed behind, grumbling about credit cards declining and maxed overdraft. Elaine stood by the window, one hand resting on the frame, watching them vanish like ghosts retreating into a house they no longer owned. She opened Gwen's email, printed the new documents, and sat at the kitchen table with her favorite pen. No hesitation this time. She signed the final trust amendment, sealing it like a vault. Every asset she'd ever owned, house proceeds, insurance, savings bonds, would bypass Riley and James completely. The funds would instead go to Cedar Valley Animal Haven and a community health clinic in Evanston. Quiet lives, quiet impact, no name plaques required. She slid the signed pages into her outgoing folder and checked the door locks. 3 clicks, 1 deadbolt. Then she opened her drawer to move the deed into her bag for safekeeping. It was gone. For a full 3 seconds, Elaine didn't move. Then her eyes narrowed. She checked the rest of the drawer. Papers undisturbed. The spare checkbook still in place. The prescription organizer untouched. But the deed? Not there. She moved quickly, heart tight in her chest, checking the other drawer where she kept the notarized copy. Still there. She exhaled. Not gone, just touched. The original had been folded slightly, corner bent the way James bends receipts when he pockets them. She turned toward the staircase. Upstairs, the floor creaked under someone's weight. Elaine walked back to the kitchen, retrieved her phone, and tapped a number without hesitation. Gwen? It's me. A pause, then Gwen's voice, alert. Elaine? I need the documents scanned and backed up digitally. All of them. I think James was trying to steal a copy. Gwen swore softly. I'll courier you duplicates by morning, and I'll call in a locksmith to rekey the interior drawers. Elaine hung up and turned off the lights one by one. She didn't confront anyone. Not yet. She'd already learned the value of timing, but upstairs, James's door clicked shut a moment too late, and Elaine, walking toward her bedroom with quiet fury in her bones, whispered just 3 words to the dark. Not this time. Elaine stood in the hallway the next morning, watching the locksmith drill cleanly through the old knob on the office door. The scent of metal filings mixed with dust, memory, and the faint aroma of Gwen's lavender hand cream. She'd arrived early, again, file folder in hand. Everything okay? The technician asked without looking up. Just upgrading, Elaine said. By noon, every internal drawer had been refitted with discreet cam locks. A smart deadbolt secured the front and back doors, keyed only to Elaine's fingerprint and Gwen's override code. A Ring camera now perched just under the porch awning, blinking red with awareness. No more accidental openings. No more guessing who was watching whom. While the locksmith packed up, Gwen pulled out her phone and waved a document at Elaine. Cease and desist is ready, she said. It references unlawful tampering, intimidation, and suspected theft of estate materials. If James breathes near your papers again, we've got backup. Elaine signed it without hesitation. By 2 p.m., Gwen had submitted it to the county, and a copy was hand-delivered to James via a neutral courier who never crossed the threshold. Elaine watched through the front window as James unfolded the envelope. He looked up once, caught the camera's blink, and then tore the paper in half. But even rage couldn't erase the time-stamped delivery. Gwen turned to her, almost impressed. You're running this place like a fortress now." Elaine smiled faintly. "It's not a fortress, it's just finally mine." Later that day, Elaine poured herself a cup of tea in the sunroom when Riley wandered in. She wore a sweater Elaine hadn't seen in months, one of her own, pale blue with pearl buttons, probably fished from a laundry pile without thinking, or maybe as a signal. An olive branch disguised as familiarity. Riley hovered in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself like she was the one now bracing for cold. "Mom," she said, her voice soft. Too soft. Elaine didn't respond. "I was just thinking," Riley tried again. Maybe I was too harsh. About everything. I mean, things got tense. But I know we can fix it." Elaine finally looked up. Her stare was unreadable. Not cruel. Just absolute. A judge who'd already weighed the verdict. "I've changed," Riley added. "We all make mistakes." Elaine let the silence stretch. Then, slowly, deliberately, she set her teacup down. "No," she said, "you don't want to fix it. You want it unfixed. You want time reversed." Riley opened her mouth. Elaine raised a hand, not to stop her, but to signal that the room no longer operated on her voice. "You had 5 years of my kindness and 10 years of my silence. Neither taught you anything. So now, you'll learn from absence." Riley's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Not this time. The performance had run out of rehearsal space. "I didn't think you had it in you," she whispered. Elaine stood. "That was your second mistake," she said. "Your first was believing I needed your permission to protect what's mine." They stood facing each other in the quiet, the house holding its breath. Then Riley stepped back. She didn't slam anything, just turned, slowly, and left the room. Elaine watched her go. No gloating, no smirk, just stillness. Outside, the realtor's car pulled into the drive, right on time for the walkthrough. Elaine walked to the front door, pressed a button on her phone, and watched the camera's live feed flicker to life. The foyer glowed in clean resolution, everything in view, everything controlled. The doorbell rang. Elaine opened the door with calm certainty, but just as the realtor stepped inside, her phone buzzed. A new alert. Motion detected. Side window, 4:12 p.m. Elaine's thumb froze above the screen. "Something wrong?" the realtor asked, smiling politely. Elaine didn't answer. She opened the app, tapped the feed, and watched the grainy outline of a man slip quietly around the side yard, one hand tucked into his jacket, the other reaching toward the office window. James. Elaine's eyes narrowed. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't run. Instead, she stepped away from the realtor and calmly picked up the house phone. "Gwen?" she said evenly when it connected. "Call Officer Tully. Tell him it's time." Then she ended the call and walked to the side door, each step slow, precise, and fully in control. Because the locks were new, the cameras were rolling, and Elaine Harrow was done being underestimated. The morning of the handover dawned clear, the sky washed clean by last night's rain. Elaine stood by the kitchen window in a pale blue sweater and slacks, hair pinned back, lips glossed with something barely visible but deliberate. Beside her on the table sat a small envelope, her final note to the house. Not to Riley, not to James, to the house. It had seen more silence than celebration in the last 5 years. But before that, there had been music. Walter's humming, cinnamon rolls cooling, a granddaughter giggling barefoot down the hallway. Elaine folded the note and left it on the counter, anchored by her old house key, now cold, impersonal, anonymous. By 9 a.m., the realtor's car eased into the driveway. Maya stepped out, clipboard in hand, face calm but alert. Elaine opened the door before she could knock. "All set?" Maya asked. Elaine nodded. "Ready?" From upstairs came the sound of rushed footsteps, boxes being shoved closed, curses muttered under breath. James thudded down the stairs seconds later, wild-eyed, shirt wrinkled. "You're early," he barked. "We still have time." Elaine didn't even glance at him. "You had time." Riley appeared behind him, mascara smudged, arms folded like a teenager waiting for her ride. "We thought we had until next week." Elaine held out the keys to Maya, who took them with a professional nod. "The new owners are 10 minutes away," Maya said. "They're excited. It's their first home." Riley scoffed. Must be nice. Elaine turned to her daughter, not cruel, not cold. Simply finished. This house was never about walls and floors, she said. It was about respect. You mistook it for leverage. James shifted, angry and unsure where to point it. Where are you even going? He asked. You don't have another place lined up, do you? Elaine smiled faintly. I don't need to know the end to be done with the chapter. The sound of tires on gravel signaled the arrival of the buyers. A modest SUV parked behind the realtor's car. A couple in their 30s stepped out, hands linked, eyes bright with hope. They looked toward the porch and waved politely, unaware of the storm dissolving just inside. Elaine turned to leave. Gwen's car waited at the curb, passenger door open. The engine hummed steady. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. She walked out first, her head high, her steps slow, the weight lifted from her shoulders like a shed winter coat. Behind her, Riley called out one last time, You're walking away from everything. Elaine didn't stop. Then I guess, she said over her shoulder, it was never mine if I had to carry you to keep it. She reached Gwen's car, climbed in, closed the door. The moment the latch clicked shut, her jaw unclenched. Gwen placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it. Elaine let out a long breath. Feels like nothing. But I know it's everything. They pulled away from the house slowly. The new buyers now standing in the doorway, admiring the foyer Elaine had painted herself the year Riley turned 10. Elaine glanced into the side mirror. Riley was still on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. James stood beside her, phone in hand, face tight with fury or panic, or maybe just the unfamiliar taste of consequence. The house grew smaller, then disappeared completely behind a curve in the road. Elaine didn't cry. But she did close her eyes for just a moment and whispered, Thank you, Jack. Ahead, the road unfolded with morning light spilling across it. Not dramatic, not triumphant, but quiet, clean, like a life about to begin again. And as Gwen turned on the radio, the song that played wasn't new, but it was hers, not chosen by anyone else, not drowned out, just hers. Elaine's new condo was quiet in a different way, not the silence of resentment or withheld words, but the kind that came from control. Peace wasn't a sound, it was an absence. No footsteps stomping downstairs, no laughter with a knife inside it, no mocking tones echoing through her own kitchen. She sat at the small breakfast table, light filtering through gauzy curtains. A stack of mail lay beside her cup of tea, mostly catalogs and donation flyers. Then, beneath a phone bill, she saw it. A plain envelope, handwritten. No return address, just her name in careful script. She almost didn't open it, then she did. Gran, I don't know if you'll want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I've been meaning to write this for months, and I finally stopped waiting for the right time. What Mom did, how she treated you, I didn't get it when I was younger. I didn't understand how hard you were trying to hold us together, but I'm older now. In my second year of law school, I'm learning how the law can protect people, or be used to control them, and how sometimes the people you love most are the ones you need protection from. I saw what happened with the house. I heard what she said about you. I just wanted you to know. I see you now. If you're open to it, I'd like to visit. Not to ask for anything. Just to learn. From you. Love. Ethan. Elaine sat back, the paper soft and warm in her hand. She read the letter twice more. The words didn't shimmer or dance. They didn't ache. They just landed, square in the center of something that had been locked too long. She set the letter down. Then she walked to the mantel, where the sale check from the house sat in a folder, unclaimed. Gwen had called twice to confirm her disbursement instructions. Now she was ready. Elaine opened her notebook, flipped to the last page, and wrote out 2 names. Cedar Valley Animal Haven. The Margaret Shaw Center for Women in Transition, half the sale would go to each. One for the voiceless, one for the silenced, not out of spite, but to unmake a cycle, to redirect legacy toward something that grew. That afternoon, she walked the envelope to the post office herself. The clerk, a teenager with chipped nail polish and a warm smile, complimented her scarf. "First time anyone's noticed," Elaine said with a grin. "It was my husband's favorite." She mailed the check. No ceremony, just intention. Later that evening, she sat by the window as the sun dipped low across the trees. Her tea had gone cold, but she didn't bother reheating it. She reread Ethan's letter once more, then tucked it into the same drawer where Jack's cufflinks still lived. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. She lit a candle on the side table and scribbled a note on a blank card. Ethan, one visit, no expectations, just tea and honesty. Then she picked up her phone, scrolled to Gwen's name and started to type. But just then, a chime echoed from her inbox. New message, subject line. Rights inquiry, your story, screen adaptation interest. Elaine stared at it, blinking. Then slowly she laughed, a quiet one, software disbelieving, because even as she made peace with letting go, something else had found her, her voice, her legacy, and maybe for the first time, the chance to write her own ending, or start again. It was nearly dusk when the knock came. Not sharp, not forceful, just persistent enough to be desperate. Elaine didn't move at first. She sat on the edge of her armchair, holding a cup of tea that had gone lukewarm in her hands. Outside, the sky was tinted with that pale orange that never lasted long, beauty that didn't need to announce itself. Another knock, then a voice. "Mom? Please, I just need to talk." Elaine stood, set the cup on a coaster, and walked slowly to the door. She opened it, not wide, not welcoming, just enough. Riley stood on the other side, hair pulled into a messy bun, mascara smudged, jeans stiff from overuse. Her coat was zipped only halfway, like she'd put it on in a hurry, or hadn't bothered finishing the job. Her face was thinner, or maybe just hollowed in a new way. "Hi," she said. It came out like a question, like the word itself wasn't sure it belonged here. Elaine said nothing. "I don't have anywhere else to go," Riley continued. "James left, took the car, most of the cash. Said I wasn't worth the mess." Elaine's face didn't change. "I've been staying at a friend's place," Riley added. "But her lease is ending, and I've been trying to get work, but it's hard and—" She broke off, voice cracking. "I know I screwed up," she said, more quietly now. "I know I said things, awful things. But you're still my mother. Doesn't that count for something?" Elaine leaned gently against the frame, the wood warm beneath her palm. "You said I was cruel," she said. "You laughed when I brought groceries. You planned around my funeral while I was still breathing." Riley looked down. "I know." Elaine didn't soften. "You didn't just hurt me. You dismissed me. You rewrote me." Silence. "Just one more chance," Riley whispered. "That's all I'm asking, please." Elaine reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She extended it. Riley took it slowly. Unfolded it. A phone number. "What is this?" "A trauma-informed counselor," Elaine said. "Sliding scale. Takes walk-ins." Riley stared. "That's it? That's what I have to offer? I'm your daughter." Elaine stepped back. "You're someone I hope chooses healing, but I won't carry you to it." Riley's mouth twisted, but no words came. She folded the paper tightly, shoved it into her pocket like it burned her, and stepped back from the doorway. "You think this makes you righteous?" she snapped. "You think being cold makes you strong?" Elaine didn't reply. She simply reached for the door. Riley's voice rose behind her. "You'll regret this. One day, when no one comes knocking." Elaine looked her in the eye. "Then I'll light a candle and keep reading." And she closed the door. Not fast, not cruel, just final. She leaned against the wood for a moment, her breath steady. Outside, muffled footsteps faded. A few minutes passed, then her phone buzzed. Text. "Marla, neighbor. Thought you should see this. Your sidecam caught it, sending the clip now." Elaine tapped the link. A short video opened, grainy, but clear. Riley, just moments earlier, standing by Elaine's side window, eyes darting around. She pulled something from her coat, a screwdriver. She pressed it to the screen latch. The motion sensor light flicked on. She cursed, dropped the tool, and ran. Elaine watched the clip twice, then she saved it. Her finger hovered over Gwen's name in her contacts. But she didn't press call. Not yet. She turned off the porch light and drew the curtains shut. Some doors didn't need to be slammed to stay closed. They just needed to be sealed with clarity. And this one was airtight. Elaine took her time forwarding the video. No fury, no vengeance, just a measured click, a polite subject line, home security footage, attempted tampering, and a note addressed to Officer Tully at the local precinct. By mid-morning, she received a reply, Officer Tully. Got it. Crystal clear. This qualifies as attempted forced entry. Want to proceed? Elaine typed back, Yes. I'm ready. 2 hours later, she met with a pair of uniformed officers at the small precinct office tucked behind the public library. Gwen joined her, sleeves rolled and briefcase in hand, her energy all flint and focus. The officers watched the clip 3 times, took notes, and printed out a formal complaint. When Elaine signed her name, her hand didn't shake. She's family, one officer said quietly, not judgmental. Just human. She's dangerous, Gwen replied evenly. Legally and emotionally. Elaine nodded once. And she doesn't get another pass just because she shares my blood? By the time they left, a misdemeanor charge had been filed, trespassing with intent to tamper, and Gwen had already submitted paperwork for a restraining order. It would be official within 72 hours. Outside, the air smelled like thawing soil. Gwen offered to drive her home, but Elaine waved her off with a grateful smile. I want to walk, she said. Haven't walked without looking over my shoulder in years. She strolled back slowly, past houses with wind chimes and mailboxes shaped like loons, past a child's chalk drawing smeared into the sidewalk like melted hope. At home, she kicked off her shoes, brewed a fresh pot of jasmine tea, and opened the windows, not out of necessity, but choice. She was halfway through folding a towel when the knock came. This one she recognized. She opened the door and found Ethan standing there, backpack over one shoulder, his expression nervous but kind. Not performative, not like his mother. Still like Jasmine? He asked. Elaine stepped back. I never stopped. They sat at the kitchen table, the tea between them steaming gently. The room was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. So, Ethan said after a beat, I read the court case files. I know what happened. But that's not why I came. Elaine looked at him over the rim of her mug. I came to ask about your stories, the ones no one wrote down. Her chest ached in that soft, familiar way. She hadn't expected to feel anything today but closure. Which ones? She asked. Ethan shrugged. Any that made you feel like yourself, the ones you didn't have to survive. She smiled. Not politely, not in defense, but wide and slow, like exhaling a secret she hadn't realized she'd held. They talked for 2 hours. About her time as a nurse, about Walter and his bad jokes, about how Elaine once helped a runaway girl in the hospital lobby call her father. No questions asked. They laughed, genuinely. When Ethan left, she handed him a zippered binder full of old photos and newspaper clippings. Use what you want, she said. Or don't. Just don't lose them. I won't, he said. Promise. She stood at the doorway a while after he'd gone, sipping the last of her tea. The house was still hers. The silence was still hers. But this time, it was filled. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Text from Gwen. R.O. granted. Effective immediately. We're clear. Elaine set the phone down. She walked to the back porch and sat in the wicker chair, blanket around her shoulders, the sun dipping low behind the trees. Birdsong. Wind. The rustle of possibility. She looked down at the tea in her cup and, for the first time, tasted it fully. Warm, floral, steady. Peace didn't sing. It steeped, and it stayed. The magazine arrived on a Thursday. Elaine nearly missed it, buried between an insurance notice and a circular for mattress discounts. But the glossy cover caught the light just right, and there it was. Modern Resolve, Voices That Endure, April issue. She brought it inside, slipped on her glasses, and flipped through the table of contents. Page 42. The title was simple. The Quiet Exit, A Life Retaken. The byline read E. Nolan. Her heart stuttered. Ethan. He hadn't told her. She sat on the couch, feet tucked beneath her, tea steeping on the end table beside her, hands steady, eyes sharp. She turned to the page. Her story unfolded in present tense, each paragraph crafted like it had been built from breath. It didn't begin with the house. It began with a woman in her 70s, standing in a grocery store aisle, holding a bouquet she wasn't sure she deserved. Then it unraveled, slowly, beautifully. Not a revenge saga, not a courtroom drama, but the anatomy of reclaiming one's life from the quiet violence of entitlement. There were no names, no villains, just an unnamed daughter, a marriage built on mutual reverence, a house that became a crucible, and a woman who chose not to wither but to rise, incrementally, daily, until rising was her nature. Elaine set the magazine down. She wasn't crying, but her chest ached in that full way, like something long buried had finally been brought up to breathe. Her phone buzzed, text from Ethan. "I couldn't let it sit in a drawer. You didn't just survive it, Gran. You transcended it. The world should know how dignity fights." Elaine stared at the screen, then typed back simply, "I'm proud of you, and I forgive your last name." She walked to her writing desk and opened her estate folder one final time. With Gwen's help, she'd already assigned every detail: power of attorney, charitable disbursements, healthcare proxy, funeral requests, no hymns but Nina Simone at the reception if possible. But now she added something else. One more paragraph, handwritten beneath the trust directive. "To those who stood beside me, thank you. To those who left, thank you too. You gave me room to grow." She signed it, dated it, and slipped it back into the binder. That evening, her condo smelled of citrus and sandalwood. A bouquet of spring tulips sat on the table, gifted by a neighbor. Another arrangement, a chaotic burst of sunflowers and baby's breath, had arrived with no card, but she had a hunch. 2 women from the animal shelter dropped by with banana bread and photos of a new mother dog they'd named Elaine. "She's fiercely protective," Mandy said, "and won't eat unless someone sits with her." Elaine laughed and lit a candle as they talked. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was holding her breath. Later, alone again, she picked up the magazine and ran her hand over the paper once more. She hadn't been erased. She'd been seen. And then, her laptop pinged. A new email. Subject line: Inquiry, Film Rights Interest, The Quiet Exit Story. Elaine stared at it, blinking once. Then again. She clicked it open. "Dear Mrs. Harrow, I represent a production company interested in optioning your story. We believe your journey could be deeply meaningful for a broader audience. Please let us know if you're open to a conversation. Best, Madison Levesque, Development Lead, Wildfield Pictures." Elaine read it once, then again, and this time she let herself smile. Not because she needed the world's applause, not because she'd been waiting for this moment, but because she hadn't. She'd already chosen her own ending. This question mark was just a new beginning. She reached for her phone and began typing. Subject: Thank you for reaching out. Body: Let's talk. I believe in second acts. She hit send. Then poured another cup of jasmine tea, walked to the window and opened it. Just enough to let the wind in. Enough to remind her that the world was still writing her story. And for once, she held the pen.